there. Welcome to the show. Still taking place in this blank void, which, fun fact, is actually the interior of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man's bleached arsehole. It's true, and you know what? It's actually warmer in here than you might think. This is our first show in a month, and there's clearly a lot to catch up on, including the fact that Vin Diesel chose to premiere his new song to Kelly Clarkson's virtual audience like this.
All of the time you try to find someone that hit me like you, and I'm not the type who likes to rush in, but I want to. I don't know if it feels like I do, and I was frozen when you walked in the room.
Yes. I know you might be expecting me to shit on professional grunter Vin Diesel releasing a pop song to what looks like a digital PTA meeting, but you have read me wrong on this one because that song is pure, tender art. It's honestly the only thing that's brought me joy in the last 6 months, and I had an Emmy explosively punched at me just last weekend. Let me ask this, is Vin Diesel a British sausage producer? Because the man makes bangers. But sadly, it hasn't all been fun since we've been away. In fact, basically, nothing has been fun. US COVID deaths hit 200,000, parts of the West Coast are still on fire, and in Louisville, a grand jury declined to indict anyone over the death of Breonna Taylor, merely charging one officer with wanton endangerment for shooting at her apartment building. It was an infuriatingly predictable decision, leading to widespread protests, which Fox News sought to downplay with the help of this former cop.
You have the Attorney General for Daniel Cameron for the state of Kentucky, who announced the charge, and also the city paid $12 million to the family. And you would have to ask, why are the demonstrations continuing? It's only continuing in my mind because there are people who have their own agenda.
Now, I know that sounds awful, and that's because it is, but do try and look at it from his perspective, because the cops in question were investigated, let off, and the victim's family was paid off with taxpayer money. From a former police officer's point of view, that's the system working as designed, and that is kind of the whole fucking problem here. But our main story tonight concerns the fact that last weekend Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, which was distressing enough, but is being compounded by the fact that just yesterday this happened.
Good evening. We begin with breaking news. The president nominating Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court.
Barrett is a favorite of religious conservatives for her strong anti-abortion rights views, and if confirmed would move the court to the right for a generation.
Right. Trump is about to replace a liberal icon with an extremely conservative justice who's been called the female Antonin Scalia, and she could serve for a long time. Amy Coney Barrett is only 48, and I know that I make 43 look like 76, but trust me, that is young for a Supreme Court justice. And look, if, and almost certainly when, Barrett is confirmed to the Supreme Court, the impact could be dire. In recent years, key cases have been decided by just one vote, from upholding the Affordable Care Act, to preserving DACA, to striking down an incredibly restrictive abortion law. Should those issues come before the court again, they could now easily go the other way. And there is clearly no point holding on to hope that Conservatives might choose to respect the precedent they set by refusing to even consider Merrick Garland in an election year, because that was always in bad faith, as was obvious at the time. In fact, ahead of the 2016 election, Senator Richard Burr even privately said this to a group of campaign volunteers.
If Hillary Clinton becomes president, I'm going to do everything I can do to make sure that 4 years from now, we've still got an opening on the Supreme Court.
Yeah, that's a Republican senator committing to blocking a justice confirmation, not just in an election year, but for an entire presidential term. And just think about how long 4 years is. 4 years ago, Harvey Weinstein was still producing movies. In the past 4 years, Harry and Meghan began dating, got engaged, got married, left the royal family, and I think own Netflix now. And in the past 4 years, Leonardo DiCaprio's girlfriend gains the right to legally drink alcohol. 2 more years, and she'll have no problem getting a rental car to move her belongings out of his house. Time is amazing. And some Republicans seem to rationalise their party's blatant hypocrisy by saying that, should they confirm Trump's nominee, they'll simply be bringing the court closer to the will of the country.
I recognize that we may have a court which has more of a conservative bent than it's had over the last few decades.
Donald Trump airing his grievances with the justice system for its treatment of Roger Stone, with intelligence officials for warning that Russia is trying to get him re-elected, and for some reason with the Oscars from 2 weeks ago.
And the winner is a movie from South Korea. What the hell was that all about? Was it good? I don't know. You know, I'm looking for, like, where let's get Gone with the Wind. Can we get like Gone with the Wind back, please?
Of course Trump loves Gone with the Wind. He likes his movies like he likes his rallies. Excruciatingly long, incredibly racist, and centred around a rich creep who leaves a woman crying in a mansion. Of course he likes it. It's so on brand. Look, instead of getting sucked into Trump's world, instead let's move on to the Democratic primary. A fun contest where the winner gets a new nickname from the president before ultimately losing the Electoral College. And while the end of this week brought Bernie Sanders another primary victory, for the first half of the week, much of the media's attention was focused on someone else.
We've been talking about Mike Bloomberg's candidacy for president.
We're all here talking about Mike Bloomberg.
Everybody's been talking about Bloomberg.
You hear voters saying, look, this guy says he can beat Trump and he's got the money to do it.
They kind of like dating Pete, they like dating Amy, but they like the guy who can take them to the prom in the best-looking gown, the best-looking dress, and the biggest flowers, and that's Mike Bloomberg.
What are you talking about? That is such a creepy thing to say. Although, just for the record, nobody is hoping that Mike Bloomberg will take them to the prom. No, I do get why you might confuse him with a prom date, though. He's painfully awkward, looks uncomfortable in a suit, and he's a virgin. I know he technically has 2 daughters, but that doesn't change the fact that Michael Bloomberg has big virgin energy. But it is true that Bloomberg has been getting a lot of attention. And before his horrendous flop sweat-laden display at his first debate on Wednesday, one poll actually put him in 2nd place behind Bernie Sanders. And even if he drops in the polls, don't expect him to go away anytime soon. He doesn't have to. He's personally spent more than $400 million, mostly on ads, in the last few months. Meanwhile, Google and Facebook have served up 2 billion Bloomberg ads, which has worked out to roughly 30,000 a minute. And you frankly can't have missed them because they're absolutely everywhere. At this point, they are genuinely hard to... What the fuck? There's one right now! How did you get here? This is you should not be here! Get out of here! Shoot! Shoot! I did not for you! Shoot! Shoot! Get out of here! Get out of here! Unbelievable! And look, for all the things that you might like about Bloomberg, his funding of gun control and climate change initiatives, there is much, much more to dislike. And let's start with the fact that he is truly charisma impaired, as you can see in campaign videos like this one. And before you watch this, I have to tell you, I promise this is the entire thing.
Where's my ice cream? Ah, thank you. Big gay ice cream is the best.
Okay. I don't know what's grosser there, watching Bloomberg desperately pander to gay voters, or watching him mechanically eat a spoonful of ice cream and say, like an alien wearing a human suit who's trying to fit in at a cold stone. Now, to combat that personality problem, Bloomberg has poured a ton of money into buying credibility online.
His campaign is paying popular Instagram accounts to create memes like these to make him seem like the fun candidate.
Here's just one example, an image of Danny DeVito labeled Trump's bank account, and then you have Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson labeled Bloomberg's bank account.
Yeah, it's true. Bloomberg's campaign has been paying for sponsored content on popular Instagram meme accounts like Grape Juice Boys, Fuck Jerry, and Shithead Steve. And I, for one, am incredibly disappointed. For so many years, Shithead Steve was a bastion of editorial integrity in the meme landscape. I don't know if I can ever even look at another of his memes the same way now. Even this recent classic, a photo of a plane reading longer, larger fart and captioned, "When you have diarrhea, misspelled." It loses some of its magic. I mean, of course, it's still funny and smart and good and, above all, necessary. But Shithead Steve is just tainted for me now. But the point is, all of this spending cannot and should not paper over Bloomberg's past, and not just his long history of sexist, racist comments. Because for those of us who live in New York, his true legacy was the massive expansion of Stop and... To recap everything that has happened since we've been away, but in short, we nearly went to war with Iran, the UK's election made Bojo Prime Minister, and the coronavirus has started spreading around the world. And if you happen to feel like you're getting sick right now, you do have it, and you only have hours to live. Also, Harry and Meghan left the royal family, Baby Yoda showed the world what it was like when Yoda was a baby, Bong Joon-ho won all the Oscars, Bernie Sanders won New Hampshire, and this poodle named Seba won Best in Show at the Westminster Dog Show, making her, I believe, 100% that bitch. But obviously, Obviously, we have to get to the biggest story of the break. What happens when an obvious criminal sociopath is accused of abusing his power, yet somehow holds on to his office by sailing through a sham investigation?
Gritty, the Philadelphia Flyers mascot, is now cleared of wrongdoing. A man claimed that Gritty punched his 13-year-old son in the back during a holiday photo shoot in November. After an investigation, Philadelphia police cleared Gritty. I'm sure that Gritty just kind of rolled his eyes, because that's what they're googly.
Well, hold on there, hold on. For a start, I'm not sure that googly is the best way to describe Gritty's eyes at all. Deeply psychotic? Sure. Two swirling vortexes of horniness and rage? Better. A pair of haunted nipples floating on a plate of milk and surrounded by a nest of orangutan pubes? Now we're getting somewhere. Now we're describing this monster's eyes. But clearly, Gritty is not the only aggro neon weirdo celebrating his acquittal these days. The president beat his impeachment charges, although certain Republicans who voted to acquit him claim that the whole experience may well have changed him.
I believe that the president has learned from this case. The president has been impeached. That's a pretty big lesson. I believe that he will be much more cautious in the future.
What are you talking about, Susan? Of course he hasn't learned his lesson. Trump never learns his lesson. This is the man whose firstborn child was Donald Trump Jr., and he kept having children. There's no lesson-learning capacity in the man. And if you need further proof of that, just look what happened this week with Trump associate Roger Stone, convicted last year on 7 counts of lying to Congress, witness tampering, and obstructing a proceeding. On Monday, prosecutors recommended a sentence of 7 to 9 years in prison, and that is when things got weird.
Tonight, at least 4 prosecutors stepping down from the Roger Stone case after a dramatic decision to overrule their recommendation that he spend 7 to 9 years in prison. The stunning rebuke from the Justice Department leadership came just hours after President Trump tweeted that the prosecutor's suggested sentence for Stone was, quote, horrible and very unfair, a miscarriage of justice.
Yeah, but was it a miscarriage of justice, though? Because bear in mind, Stone was found guilty on all counts. The recommendation was within established federal guidelines, and also, just look at him. I know you shouldn't profile people based on how they look, but on the other hand, look at him. Look at him. His dress code is business scoundrel. He looks like the mannequin at a department store for Dick Tracy villains. He looks like a guy whose day planner just says, frame Roger Rabbit. Look at him. And even if you think the recommended sentence was in fact too long, it's up to the judge whether to impose it, and there's an appeal system after that. But to have DOJ leadership interfering in a case involving a Trump ally hours after the president directly commented on it is appalling. This is America. Your experience with the criminal justice system should not depend on how much the president likes you. It should depend on how much money you have, what colour your skin is, and whether or not the judge has already had lunch. That is how we do things here in the United States, buddy. And the excuses offered by the president's defenders range from the absurd to the genuinely terrifying.
The executive power is vested in the president. The top law enforcement officer is the attorney general. If he wants to counteract decisions of the line prosecutor, that's his dang job. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this.
I like the fact that a president of the United States, when he sees injustice, he's pointing it out. That's exactly what you want to have a president do.
I don't want to hear any crap about an independent Justice Department. This Justice Department, as does everyone, works for the president. It is part of the executive branch.
Busy week, so there is frankly no time for us to talk about the US signing a deal with the Taliban, or Joe Biden winning in South Carolina, or even the end of billionaire Tom Steyer's presidential run, despite the fact the closing days of his campaign got weird.
This is businessman Tom Steyer with Juvenile up on stage, dancing to back that ass up.
I have a few questions there. One, the fuck? 2, you spent $250 million on your campaign. Was it worth it? And 3, that song is called Back That Ass Up. Why are you not backing your ass up? No one told you to lurch forward and then do a weird little lasso that ass up. Juvenile is standing right next to you, and he's very clear about what he wants here. Payment in full for this inexplicable campaign appearance, and also for you to back your fucking ass up. No wonder your campaign failed. But look, tonight, we're actually going to do something different. And let's dive straight in with our main story tonight, which concerns the subject that has dominated the news all week.
Global hot zones, the coronavirus spreading.
Fears grow of a global pandemic.
A huge spike in cases in Italy. Hundreds of cases in South Korea. New cases reported in Europe.
The CDC warned Americans to be prepared here at home, that it's not a matter of if, but when.
Yes, the coronavirus. On Tuesday, the CDC said that its spreading here is not a question of if, but when, which is just not a comforting thing to hear about the spread of something deadly. It's only comforting if you're talking about whether Saoirse Ronan will win an Oscar or whether Henry Kissinger will ever die. Don't worry, it's not a question of if, but when. And the CDC were not wrong. There are now several dozen confirmed cases here in the United States, with the first death coming just yesterday. Meanwhile, the stock market has taken its biggest one-week dive since 2008, and many Americans have questions about how to stay safe.
Joy Johnson emailed us asking, can I get coronavirus from a package being delivered from China? That's a great question.
Talk about these masks. Do we get them or don't we?
Some people are wondering if you can protect yourself from the virus by gargling with bleach.
What?
Or taking steroids.
Can you get the coronavirus by eating Chinese food?
No, you can't. Of course you can't get the coronavirus from eating Chinese food. In fact, if you're eating at a Panda Express, you can't even get Chinese food by eating Chinese food. Although, I will say this, you are unlikely to get the coronavirus if you regularly gargle bleach, because you know what they say, being dead is already the best medicine. Look, it might be helpful to get the very basics down here straight away. What we're talking about is a sickness called COVID-19, caused by a new strain of coronavirus. Symptoms include fever, cough, and shortness of breath, and preliminary estimates are that it has around a 2% mortality rate, with the elderly and those with pre-existing conditions most at risk. And I know some people don't seem to think that 2% is all that bad, as Chuck Todd told us in the weirdest possible way.
So last night, I surprised my teenager when I told him that only 2% of those that get this coronavirus die. He goes, oh, well, I thought it was much worse. And I understand if you just digest social media, you just digest the headlines, this feels more deadly than it is.
OK, so first, on behalf of your teenager, Dad, get out of my room and stop telling me the news. But second, 2% of people is a lot when you're talking about those people dying. Think about it this way, 2% of people disappearing was literally the premise of The Leftovers. You know, the show whose pilot very much did not consist of Justin Theroux going, well, that was rough, but to be honest, could have been worse, and then the show ended. The fact is, a 2% mortality rate, if true, would be about 20 times higher than the seasonal flu. And while the good news is around 80% of those who get this virus have mild symptoms, the bad news is that means they are more likely to spread it without even realising. That is one of the things that makes this so dangerous, and why, even though its mortality rate is much lower than that of SARS or MERS, this virus has already killed 3 times as many people. In fact, one expert has predicted that 40 to 70% of the world's population will be infected within the next year, which is incredibly upsetting, because there's only one infectious disease that 2/3 of the world should be getting right now, and that's Adam Driver fever. Hi there. Welcome to the show, still coming to you from this blank void. And before you ask, yes, we have made some changes. The desk is glass now, and that's it. That is the full extent of the upgrades. Look, it's been a busy week, from baseball returning in front of cardboard fans to Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez shredding Ted Yoho on the floor of the House to Trump bragging about passing a basic cognitive test, which I will say, in terms of brags, is at least better than I've met Ghislaine Maxwell multiple times and I wish her well. But let's actually start tonight with what's been happening in Portland, the Nature Valley granola bar of US cities, in that it's crunchy, messy, and let's be honest, nobody's first choice. The news this week has been dominated by shocking images from Portland like these.
The U.S. attorney in Oregon now wants an investigation in Portland after videos surfaced showing unidentified camouflaged agents arresting protesters and putting them into unmarked cars. And this disturbing video shows the agents beating a Navy veteran with batons and then dousing him with pepper spray when he says that he was trying to engage them in a civil conversation.
Wow. That is intense, and it frankly says so much about this country right now that CNN will show federal agents treat a human being like a piñata, yet censor that same man for rightfully telling those agents to fuck the fuck off. Look, we're already witnessing the rapid decline of American civil liberties here. Let's try not to be fucking prudes about it. The protests in Portland have actually been going on daily for nearly 2 months now, since the killing of George Floyd. But the deployment of federal agents was a sharp escalation of questionable legality. And yet, to hear the president tell it, he had no choice, and it was a terrific idea.
We're doing a great job in Portland. Portland was very rough, and they called us in, and we did a good job, to put it mildly. Many people in jail right now.
OK. First, it's never good when Trump says he's doing a great job, given that he thinks his administration is doing a great job dealing with the coronavirus, and he once proclaimed Ben Affleck would do a great job as Batman. Clearly, this man has no sense of what a great job actually looks like. And for the record, those agents were very much not called in. Oregon's governor quickly announced that she didn't want them there and that the federal government should remove them from our streets. And Portland's Mayor Ted Wheeler said pretty much the same.
What they're doing is they are sharply escalating the situation. They're not wanted here. We haven't asked them here. In fact, we want them to leave.
Yeah. Masked individuals throwing people into an unmarked van is never a good idea if you want to de-escalate a situation. It's not even a good idea for a surprise bachelorette party. Wow, you got me. I honestly thought I was being kidnapped there for a second. My life flashed before my eyes, and I think I may have shit myself, but you girls are the best. Bring on the strippers. And the reason federal agents were not called in might be that things weren't actually especially dire in Portland. Protests have been mostly peaceful there, which is not to say that there haven't been some isolated chaotic incidents, although those situations have not been helped by the fact that the local police force, under the leadership of Ted Wheeler, incidentally, have routinely overreacted using things like tear gas to the point where Wheeler actually became known as Tear Gas Teddy, which I guarantee you is set to be this Christmas's worst-selling toy. And they have justified dangerous crowd control tactics by releasing photos like this, claiming they've been attacked with, among other things, a can of White Claw and a half-eaten apple, which is less a threatening display of weaponry and more of a summoning circle for ghosts who died on day 3 of Burning Man. And for all the talk by Trump and administration officials of the need to restore order in Portland, those on the ground will tell you it's not entirely what's being portrayed.
What we've noticed is that the volume that is being described by DHS and including administration officials doesn't seem to square with what's going on here on the ground. Yeah, you do have rioters, you do have people that are trying to deface this building, but it's not as though this is overwhelming chaos. I mean, we're talking about one city block that's the epicenter here.
Exactly. It's about one block that was actually starting to see fewer confrontations between protesters and police before federal agents moved in. Or, if you watch Fox News, it's the end of America as we know it.
For more than 6 weeks now, the city of Portland has been under siege by radical leftist mobs who are intent on destroying everything America stands for.
Portland has now experienced 50 straight days of left-wing violence. We are watching a war on the streets of Portland.
We saw Elizabeth Warren and Michael Bloomberg ending their presidential campaigns, in Bloomberg's case, after personally spending over $500 million. It is hard to overstate just how much money Bloomberg wasted, although, as Brian Williams viewers know, it's not impossible.
When I read it tonight on social media, it kind of all became clear. Bloomberg spent $500 million on ads, U.S. population 327 million. Don't tell us if you're ahead of us on the math. He could have given each American $1 million and have had lunch money left over. It's an incredible way of putting it.
It's an incredible way of putting it. It's true. It's disturbing.
Okay. For the record, it's not true. $500 million divided by 327 million is not a million. It's around $1.50, which goes to show, too, you can't believe everything you see on Twitter. Twitter is not where you go for facts. It's where you go to see the official account for New Jersey tweet Gabagool. Or Post Malone tweet is meatball and fruit. Or see Henry Winkler posting photos of him holding fish. Seriously, it's all the man does. But obviously, the big story of this week was the coronavirus, how the common cold described itself on its resume. Cases continue to rise, and unfortunately, the Trump administration's response has left a lot to be desired.
All week, the president has been playing fast and loose with the facts, claiming a coronavirus vaccine could be ready in months.
I don't think they know what the time will be. I've heard very quick numbers, a matter of months, and I've heard pretty much a year would be an outside number.
Only to be contradicted by the experts.
So he's asking the question, when is it going to be deployable? And that is going to be at the earliest a year to a year and a half, no matter how fast you go.
It now seems that every Trump press conference has to come with an epilogue from an expert clarifying all the things he just got wrong. If I may jump in here, the president just said that a cure would come very quickly. It's more likely to take at least a year. He also said that it's the meanest virus he's ever seen. That's ridiculous. It's a virus. It has no intent. You also saw the president assure us that you couldn't get the virus from sucking on D's. I then mistakenly asked, D's what? To which he replied, D's nuts, and demanded a high five. And while I cannot believe I have to say this, depending on the nuts, we cannot say for absolute certain that you would not get the coronavirus from sucking on Doe's nuts. But it is not just that the Trump administration is sometimes doling out bad information. It's occasionally no information at all. On Wednesday, the Vice President gave a briefing in which he claimed insurance would cover the coronavirus testing. But just watch as he leaves before a reporter can ask a fairly important follow-up.
Can you provide some guidance to the uninsured? Can the uninsured get tested? Gentlemen, ladies, can the uninsured get tested?
Scream into the camera, they can't get you anywhere.
Well, how about answering the question? We would like an answer to that question. That's a valid question.
Yeah, it is a valid question. He's asking if nearly 30 million uninsured Americans will have access to a test for a deadly contagious virus. That is relevant. If he was shouting something pointless out, like, excuse me, Mr. Vice President, what's the difference between bisque and chowder? Or are chipmunks just baby squirrels? Or should Nelly be considered an elite rapper? Sure, ignore him. Those questions are stupid. And for the record, the answers to those questions are texture, no, and of course Nelly's an elite rapper. Country Grammar, E.I., Ride With Me, Batter Up on a debut album? A debut album? Get the fuck out of here with this non-elite rapper bullshit. But the event that truly summed up how chaotic the president's response has been was when he visited the CDC on Friday and spent 45 minutes, among other things, saying the governor of Washington is a snake, asking if his town hall on Fox News got good ratings, and bragging that every one of the doctors at the CDC said, how do you know so much about this? To which his answer was, maybe I have a natural ability. Then there was the subject of testing kits, the current shortage of which may be allowing the virus to spread undetected. Even Mike Pence has said it could be a matter of weeks until the tests are widely available. So right now, not everyone who wants a test can get a test. That's important to know, yet for some reason, Trump said this.
Anybody that wants a test can get a test. Anybody right now and yesterday, anybody that needs a test gets a test. They're there. They have the test. And the tests are beautiful.